Mark Joseph on behalf of the California Unions for Reliable Energy. I have been an environmental lawyer for more than 25 years. I want to thank Senator Jackson and Senator Hill. She may be right, there is no low-hanging fruit in CEQA, but this fruit is certainly quite reachable and certainly worth picking and eating. We support the bill. Thank you.
Mr. Chair and members, Caitlin Vega for the California Labor Federation, also here in support. We really appreciate the work of the authors and the committee to try to find some common ground on this issue and do some reforms that make sense, I think, to both sides, while also always making sure that the public participation is preserved. Thank you.
Good morning, Kelly Ditto with California League Conservation Voters in Support.
Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and Mr. Leno. I'm Cassie Gilson on behalf of the California Building Industry Association. I want to thank the Senator and Senator Hill for being brave enough to wade into the waters of CEQA. I'm delighted to say that with the removal of Section 6, the BIA as well as Cal Chamber removes their opposition to the bill. And just clarify with regard to the provisions about concurrent prep of the record, our organizations aren't opposed to that. We just wanted to make the point that we don't think there will be a tremendous amount of use for it, but except for very, very large projects, because most of the smaller projects, the infill projects I referenced earlier in the hearing, don't have the financing to allow them to front those costs. But nonetheless, it's at the project proponent's election, and having that option is helpful. So thanks very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I could ask a question. It's my mic. So I was going to ask a question about that, because our analysis highlights one particular argument in opposition, and it wasn't about Section 6. It was about the administrative record. And so you're here to say, and I know you're not speaking for all business interests, yes, but I had presumed that most of these business associations that are listed in opposition, given that this was highlighted, had that concern more about the administrative record than Section 6. It's really about Section 6.
Yes, that's correct.
So we'll probably be hearing from some of these other business-related interests that with that no longer in the bill, again, given that it's at their election, whether it's used or not. But I do have one question for you.
Sure.
I'm just looking here. It says specifically the cost shifts to the project developer, and that it could be in the hundreds of thousands of dollars per this statement. In a many multi-million-dollar project, isn't spending a couple $100,000 to buy yourselves 12 months of expedition a great deal?
Absolutely. And I think in some circumstances, I think the Senator mentioned the King's Arena, where they know there's litigation coming and they have the kind of financing that allows them to do that. They'll look at that and say, you know, no brainer, we're going to do it. I think that.
Why would that have been put into a letter of opposition then?
So I think that I don't
know exactly who. Well, I think a number of people signed on to that letter. Right?
If you read the letter, it's not opposed to that provision. It's just making. It's really opposed to the part that was taken out.
6, yeah.
It's just making the point that. There are very few projects that will be able to avail themselves of that. And so for a whole bunch of projects that are critical to our communities, infill, hospitals, you know, UC projects, those kind of things that may not have the financing that even if they would like to, would allow them to, or if you're in a smaller infill project and it's a neighbor thing and you're not exactly sure whether you're end up in litigation, the clarity of weighing the cost now and then isn't as clear. Those folks are likely not to avail themselves. So it's just sort of giving you a sense of the uptake and use of that provision, but I don't think the letter was intended to indicate that we oppose having it in the bill, and certainly because it's at the election of the project proponent, it's hard to oppose. Yes.
But in fact, it could be very beneficial for a larger development. And again, it's mostly the larger developments that are a part of the 0.02% of all civil litigation that I think it might be used more than not, and what a great option to have to buy a year's time for a relatively small amount of money relative to your project size. So I'm glad to hear you say that.
Yes, correct.
Thank you.
Next.
I'm Neely Goddard with the California Association of Realtors, and also moving to a neutral position with the removal of Section 6. Thank you very much.
Amber Blix with the Independent Energy Producers Association. Our primary concern was also Section 6, so once we see those amendments in print, we would like to remove our opposition as well. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, members, Jason Ryan at the League of California Cities. We had a letter of concerns, not opposition. The removal of Section 6 addresses nearly all of our concerns. With regard to the other two provisions, we believe Section 1, the concurrent preparation of the record, we can do it in our existing law, so this expansion and clarification is something that we are supportive of. Want some minor clarifications on the clearinghouse, but with that, we greatly thank you for taking Section 6 out.
Thank you. Christina Lucky with the California Special Districts Association. I just want to align my comments with the League of California Cities. Thanks, Senator Jackson and Hill, for working with us on these provisions. And again, our main concern was the issue of which is in Section 6, and so we thank you for removing that.
Good afternoon, Justin Fanza on behalf of the California State Association of Electrical Workers, the Western States Council of Sheet Metal Workers, the California State Pipe Trades Council, and the Coalition of California Utility Employees. I'd like to associate our comments with that of Mr. Diaz and Mr. Joseph in support. Thanks.
Thank you. Others opposed to SB 122? All right. Or in support? In support. Now let's turn to opposition. Is there any opposition to SB 122 who would like to testify? Seeing none. We don't have a quorum, so I'll just ask you to close.
Well, I want to thank all of the people here today. You can see that by the removal of the opposition that Section 3 is on the end of, or at the last minute productions of opposition and so forth is an area of great challenge. The other two, though, I think as noted, I think are very helpful. The first one in particular is voluntary, but it makes it clear that that option is available. We hope that those who are going to be subject to litigation will take advantage of it. I think with those two items, particularly the clearinghouse as well, this is going to improve and streamline CEQA. That's the goal of this bill. And with that in mind, I would ask for your aye vote.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chair, I know we don't have a quorum yet, but I do have another question for the author. Having just participated in the hearing that we had prior to your presentation of the bill, among the things that we learned was that there could be some benefit to simplifying infill exemptions. And I know you said this was not going to be an omnibus bill for CEQA, but might there be some consideration, or should that wait for another bill introduction altogether?
Well, I think, frankly, because we're really trying to get consensus on this. I mean, this is, we're not trying to ram anything through for anybody, because the goal is to find areas of common agreement. So I, frankly, would be very interested to see whether simplifying definitions of infill would be something that both sides, or all, there aren't both sides, there are all sides, there are a number of sides on this issue, would be interested in and continuing the discussion. This measure started seeking consensus. We sent out inquiries to all the stakeholders, and if they would be interested in this, I would certainly be interested in amendments that would include it. But the goal right now is to preserve the easiest of them, the one where, easy meaning where we've gotten consensus. So to the extent that that adding that might create some consternation and what have you, we'll consider it, but not if it's going to impact items 1 and 2, which are before you today.
I get that completely. And again, remembering what Mr. Rivas-Plata had shared with us, the idea was to simplify, right. Not complicate, but simplify. I'm sure the devil would be in the details, but it would be interesting to find out what the stakeholders have to say.
And we shall try to do that.
Yeah.
Could I just say one thing
Please.
about the infill issue? OPR did do a survey of planning directors in cities and counties throughout California about where CEQA is in terms of a hurdle to infill development, and they listed it as 12th out of 16 factors that affect infill development or are seen as a hurdle to infill development. Less than 5% of the respondents even identified CEQA as an issue at all. So I think that it's probably exaggerated in terms of its impact. They identified lack of infrastructure, lack of financing, hostile local zoning, poor schools as much greater factors.
So the same would be true if we were to simplify, it may not have that.
It may not help. And also, the legislature did just pass SB 226 a year or two ago, and the implementing guidelines have just gone into effect. Okay. So it might be worth seeing how that.
Okay, thank you.
All right. we'll conclude the hearing on SB 122. And
Very good.
At the time, we'll bring a motion. Let's move to item number 2 on this morning's agenda. This is SB 5.
1, 2, 3, 4. Don't we have a quorum?
And Senator Vidak, I see, is in the back. This is the California Global Warming Solutions Act exemption.
We
No.
do not have a Republican, and we typically don't
Yeah.
establish a quorum without a Republican member. Oops, sorry.
Good morning.
Good morning.
It's not a requirement, but we try to respect it.
We're proceeding as a subcommittee. It's getting smaller as we... Go ahead.
All of us were governance and finance, and we're just coming back. I think Patricia Bates is on there.
Go ahead, Senator.
Mr. Chair, members, good morning. I am pleased to present Senate Bill 5, which will remove transportation fuels and propane from the fuels under the CAP program. The fuels under the CAP regulation put into place by the Air Resources Board took effect January 1st and have directly resulted in higher prices at the pump. Gasoline is not a luxury for most Californians. It is a necessity. Communities that I represent already suffer from extreme poverty and some of the highest unemployment rates in the state as well as the country. And now we're requiring them to pay more for their limited budget for gasoline. These higher gas prices will also take money out of the classroom. Local governments may have to make cuts to their budgets because they now have to pay more for gas and diesel for school buses, fire trucks, and police cars. There has been so much discussion over how much this regulation will increase gas prices. The LAO estimates that this policy alone will result in increased gas prices up to 13 to 20 cents a gallon, but it could be as high as 50 cents a gallon. Other estimates have put it as cost as high as 76 cents a gallon. Regardless of our beliefs in AB 32, it is a fact that Californians today are paying more for gasoline as a direct result of this regulation, and that was put into effect by the Air Resources Board. This is an unfair, regressive tax that will hurt many vulnerable, low-income Californians and local government services. With me today is Steve Ward from the Clovis Unified School District and some others. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ward. Please proceed in support.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and member. I'm the legislative analyst for Clovis Unified School District and the executive officer for the California School Funding Coalition. Thank you for the opportunity to share the impact increasing costs of transportation fuels due to their inclusion in the cap and trade program will have upon schools. Clovis Unified serves over 40,000 students, nearly 17,000 or 42% are low-income English learner or foster youth. Our coalition reflects the diversity of schools and communities across our state. Enrollments range from 900 to 60,000, and the unduplicated count from 4% to 92%. Districts represent some of our most affluent regions of, such as Beverly Hills and Cupertino, as well as drought and poverty-stricken communities on the west side of the San Joaquin Valley, such as Riverdale and Coalinga Huron. The needs of our children vary dramatically, but our educational teams share a common goal: to use the local control provided by the LCFF to spend every dollar of our base, supplemental, and concentration grants effectively and efficiently to maximize the achievement of every child we serve. New statutes, many passed since the implementation of the LCFF, are increasing the cost of educating children in California. Our coalition has identified many new costs, some of which include rising employee retirement system rates, potential increase in the minimum wage, Affordable Care Act's expanded benefits and fees, enhanced employee sick leave benefits, and there are many more. Increases in fixed costs do little to provide new services for children and threaten to outpace the increased funding we are receiving from the LCFF, funds which our parents and community believe to be used to improve services for children. The increased cost of transportation fuels will impact every school district's budget. School board members will be faced with choosing which service to reduce or not implement in order to pay this new cost. To put this in perspective, Clovis Unified used 300,000 gallons of fuel last year. This year, the increased cost for the fuel could range from $30,000 to $140,000. A conservative estimate would be $600,000 over the next 6 years. Our school board would have to choose how to use those $600,000. They'd rather use it on 20,000 hours of intervention services, or purchasing 800 computers, or purchasing 3 clean-burning diesel school buses. Our region's Air Quality Management District estimated there are over 400 dirty diesel buses in our valley, one of the most polluted areas of our state. How much better would it be if districts could choose to purchase clean-burning buses instead of paying higher fuel costs? Clovis Unified and our coalition support SB 5, and we thank you for considering the impact of increasing fuel costs upon school districts as you contemplate your vote on SB 5. Thank you.
Thank you. Others in support of SB 5 by Senator Videk.
Mr. Chairman, Paul Yoder on behalf of the Boards of Supervisors in Tulare, Madera, and Fresno counties who all support Senator Videk's bill. Thank you.
Others in support?
Mr. Chairman and committee members, John Kabatek, California Executive Director of the National Federation of Independent Business, in proud support of SB 5. Small business owners are very uncertain out there, and this just makes sure that we're looking out for jobs and protecting small businesses at a time when we really need to be doing so. So thank you.
Okay. Others in support of SB 5? Now let's hear from the opposition. Anyone here that's opposed to SB 5? Please come forward.
Mr. Chair and members, Jenna Price on behalf of the California League of Conservation Voters in strong opposition to SB 5. I will be brief. When other major industries began participating in California's cap and trade system, oil companies and other fuel producers were given an extra 2 years to comply. We feel like they've had enough time, and it's time that they start playing fairly with the rest of California's industry. And while 800 computers is a wonderful goal, it doesn't really matter if the children can't get to school because they have breathing problems and are stuck inside because of spare the air days. We ask for your no vote. Thank you.
Next.
Mr. Chair and members, Brian Early on behalf of Environmental Defense Fund would like to echo the comments of Ms. Price on behalf of CLCV in opposition to this measure. And I would also like to highlight that as a recent informational hearing on the Senate side explored, the nexus between these programs and gas prices is quite uncertain. Thank you.
And that's reflected in the committee report. Next.
Mr. Chairman and members, Delaney Hunter on behalf of the Southern California Public Power Authority. We are opposed to SB 5. We've opposed most measures that have tried to delay the sort of inclusion of the transportation sector within the overall cap and trade program. We in the electric sector have been in for multiple years. We're working hard to do the best we can. If you've ever been to a small city council that runs a utility, we hear it every single week about the cost of electricity, and we are doing our best to manage that. We think a partnership between the transportation and the electric sector is key. We can do that under a cap and trade system. We urge your opposition.
Next.
Phoebe Seaton, Leadership Council for Justice and Accountability. We are a nonprofit organization based in the San Joaquin Valley, Coachella Valley, working with lower income communities. We're opposed to SB 5. We align our comments with CLCV. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Others opposed to SB 5? All right. Let's bring it back to committee. Questions of the author?
I don't think I have a question, a comment when you want it.
Questions?
I can frame it as a question.
Okay.
I guess, Senator Videk, did you happen to listen in on the hearing we had on the reason for the price spike of fuel costs of about $1 since the first of the year?
I didn't get a chance to listen in on that, but I know when we've add a price to our refiners, then it's going to be passed on, and there's no doubt that prices have gone up because of this, and I think that's probably maybe the intention too, is to have less people driving.
What was interesting about that hearing, and I think it is in the staff report, is it not?
Yes, it is.
Was, and it came as a surprise to many people in the room, but we couldn't figure out why, since the per barrel costs have gone down so low nationally, why in California it went up by $1. And there were a lot of scare tactics by the oil companies, you know, in the fall, what would happen after January 1st. Well, according to the testimony from a variety of people, including the independent oil producers, 20 cents of the gallon was because of fuel blends, because you're from the Central Valley, and I'm from Fresno State, and I'm from Los Angeles. We have a more stringent requirements on fuel blends because of the health impacts, particularly to children. And so we have cleaner fuel requirements, especially during the long, hot summers that exacerbate the problem. Also, 10 cents was related to fuels coming under the cap, 10 cents, not the dollar. And 70 cents, it was really interesting, was what was described as oligarchy, is that correct? Two refiners one had a labor problem, one had an explosion, and the other 5 refiners decided, instead of undercutting and taking advantage of the market share that they would have achieved by keeping their gas prices low. It wasn't direct collusion, but the results of it were all 7 refiners raised their gas prices by 70 cents within a month or 2 period. That was the reason for the gas price spike. And I want people that testify here to realize what is going on in some of this gas price. In my own district, if you just drive around, and I'm sure it's the same in the Central Valley, I can go to Oxnard and pay $3 a gallon, and I can go 20 miles further and pay $3.45 a gallon with the same station, same price. Yes. So there is a lot of, not illegal manipulation, but manipulation of prices that affects schools and everything else and small businesses and all of us. And there is an incredible amount of lack of competitiveness in the fuel supply system. And so what I'm trying to work on is building in some competitiveness in fueling. So it's not just petroleum who can game the system by having only 7 refineries, and they lockstep together in raising prices up and down regardless of whether they really have costs. And so electrification, that's why the lady from representing the utility sector was part of it. So there are a lot of variables, and I'm very sensitive to the health impacts of fuels in the Central Valley, and that's why collectively working together we can use part of the auction revenue coming from putting fuels under the cap into reducing not only the cost, any kind of cost impacts, but improving the public health, because loss of ADA to schools because of having health problems, asthma and others by children is also, I know we both care about that as well. Absolutely. So I'm not supporting this today.
Thank you. Senator Vidak, why don't you close and you may respond to Senator Pavley's question, or just do your close.
No, I agree with you in many points. There's a lot of market situations that make things go up, absolutely. But we do know that this is costing at least 10 cents, and I represent some of the poorest folks in the country, let alone the state. And I just respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Very good. The chair will note that there's a quorum present in the Environmental Quality Committee. Assistant, please call the roll.
Senators Wykowski?
Here.
Wykowski here. Gaines? Bates?
Aye.
Bates here.
No, here.
Hill?
Quorum.
Senator Hill?
Here.
Hill here. Jackson?
Here.
Jackson here. Leno? Pavley?
Here.
Pavley here.
Having established a quorum, Senator Bates, do you have a motion?
Move the item.
There's a motion on SB 5. Please call the roll.
Item 2, SB 5 by Senator Vidak. The motion is due pass and referred to Committee on Appropriations. Senators Wykowski?
No.
Wykowski, no. Gaines? Bates?
Aye.
Bates, aye. Hill?
No.
Hill, no. Jackson?
No.
Jackson, no. Leno? Pavley?
No.
Pavley, no.
1-4. That matter has 1 vote to 4. We will keep the roll open for the absent members to be able to come. Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
All right. Moving on. Oh.
Item number 5.